Hey everyone, and welcome. My name is Colleen Murray, and I'm one of the college counselors here at Villa Duchesne, and my colleague Erin Ramirez and I, in conjunction with the other 8 West County private high schools in our consortium, which is CBC, Chaminade, and DeSmet, and St. Joseph's Academy, Priory, and Visitation, Westminster Academy, Whitfield School, and Villa Duchesne. We would like to welcome you all to our college admissions panel this evening. And what we wanted to do tonight is give you a bit of a glimpse into the admissions process from admissions folks who are actually reading some of the college applications and who have been doing this for a number of years. And we want to give you a little bit of a peek behind the curtain that seems to shroud a lot of the admissions process. And we wanted to show you that there are human beings in this process. They are the ones driving the decisions. And these folks are here tonight from 5 different institutions. They're all very different institutions that run their admissions offices, their undergraduate admissions offices, in very different ways. And they are here to talk with you a little bit about the process. So whether you are a junior who has already pushed up your sleeves and dived into this, maybe visited a few campuses, maybe started on your common application or getting your activity list together, or you are a younger student just starting the process. Wherever you are, we are happy to see you here tonight and eager to share with you a bit more about this whole college search and application process. So we are thrilled to welcome these 5 different individuals from, again, 5 very different institutions. So we have John Palmer Ray from Vanderbilt University. He is the Associate Director in the Office of Undergraduate Admission. We have Abby Frank, who is from Denison University, and she is the Assistant Director of Admissions. We have Mitch Arnett, who is a Senior Assistant Director of Admissions at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. We have Jean Marie Cox, who is the Associate Vice President of Enrollment and Dean of Admission at St. Louis University. And we have Chuck May, who is the Executive Director of Admissions at the University of Missouri-Columbia, which most of you know as Mizzou. So I will let each of them introduce themselves a little bit more, tell you a little bit about what they do in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions, and tell you a little bit more about their institutions. And then we will start with our panel. We have some questions that folks submitted prior to that we'll discuss, but we will be open to trying to get all of your questions answered. So, John Palmer, if you would like to go ahead and start.
All right. Hi, everyone. Apologies for the raspy voice. Spring allergies have gotten to me, as I know they have for many of us. But my name's John Palmer Ray from Vanderbilt down in Nashville. Been with Vanderbilt for a couple of years. I work pretty closely with our teams that focus on kind of rural and small town outreach, as well as the visitor experience. For those of y'all unfamiliar or learning a little bit more about Vanderbilt, we're a medium-sized private liberal arts and research institution. We are right in the heart of Nashville, about 2 miles south of downtown, just over 7,000 undergraduate students. We are a highly selected institution. Acceptance rate was about 6% for this past year. And we have about 70 different majors housed within our 4 different undergraduate schools as well. I'm glad to be with y'all.
Hello, my name is Abby Frank. I'm an Assistant Director of Admission at Denison University. You're probably like, where's Denison? Well, it's located in Granville, Ohio. Where's Granville? Granville is located around 25-30 minutes away from Columbus, Ohio. We are a direct flight away from St. Louis, so a nice 1 hour and a half trip from here. 4 things I like to share about Denison is we are a 4-year liberal art residential college. So as a college, we only house undergraduate programs. We have 65 academic programs our students can choose from. It's very common for our students to double major, double minor, you name it. There's a lot of ways. As a liberal arts institution, our students are able to kind of experience different ways of utilizing interdisciplinary studies within their academic programs and in their co-curricular activities as well. And then as a residential college, you live on campus all 4 years. And then moving forward, we are a 4-year institution, so we really pride ourselves that we are able to have our students graduate in that 4-year span. But within the admissions department, like I said, I'm an assistant director, but I work with the students in the Midwest area as well as Pacific Northwest, but specifically within the Midwest, Missouri is one of my territory spots. As well as that, I work with students who are interested in the performing and visual arts. We have a really awesome, thriving art scene at Denison, and I would be more than happy to talk through those awesome programs as well. But again, thanks so much for having us here tonight.
Hi, everyone. Thanks to Villa for having us. Like she said, my name is Mitch Arnett, Senior Assistant Director in the Office of Admission at Miami University. Miami is called Miami since we are named after the Miami tribe that lived in the area. We were established many, many years before Miami, Florida even existed. That kind of stole our thunder, so we were there first. Medium to large size public school. A lot of people wonder why you called Miami, and we always thought you were private, but we are a public school. We enroll about 17,000 undergraduate students and just a tad over 2,000 graduate students. So we definitely focus our attention on undergraduate learning. It's about 6 hours east of St. Louis. It's about 45 minutes northwest of Cincinnati, so fellow Ohio school. Housing is required on campus the first 2 years, and we have about 120 majors. It's very possible and likely that our students will double major or have a major and a minor since we are a liberal arts school. We also have over 600 clubs and organizations, including D1 sports, and about a third of our students are active in the Greek life. I think that's about it in a recap.
Thank you. My name's G. Murray Cox. I serve as the Associate Vice President of Enrollment and Dean of Admission at St. Louis University. I also serve as the past president of the National Catholic College Admission Association right now. I've been in my role at SLU for about 15 years. Prior to that, I was at Marshall University in West Virginia and Louisiana State University. At SLU, we have a campus in St. Louis that you guys probably have seen before, but we would urge you to visit again. The Midtown region is completely transformed, and it really is something to see right now if you haven't visited in the last couple of years. We also have our own campus in Madrid, Spain. We enroll around 8,000 undergraduate students and around 13,000 total students when you count our graduate programs, med school, and law school.
Hi there, I'm Chuck May, and I'm the Director of Admissions at Mizzou. I have worked in the Office of Admissions for 29 years. So I've been there the whole time since I graduated from there. Mizzou is a large public institution. We've got 31,000 students. We're in Columbia, Missouri, about 2 hours west of here. I'll stop.
All right, can each of you talk a little bit about the factors that you are considering when in this whole admissions process? You all use some of the same factors, some of the same characters, some difference. Can you talk about what you use and how you use it and how it all comes together? Whoever wants to start, go ahead.
First way. So at Mizzou, we have published admission requirements. So you can see online, we will use your test score and we'll use your high school GPA for admission. It's a sliding scale. So if you meet a certain test score and a certain GPA, you're automatically in. We do have still, again, this year, test optional admission. We are still in a pilot program. Test optional admission for us is set by the curators of the University of Missouri system. So they decide it for all 4 of the campuses, us, UMSL, UMCA, and Missouri S&T. They did decide in February to extend test optional to the class of 2025. So we will have that option too. For test optional, like most schools, we will look at your essay, we will look at teacher recommendations, we will look at your resume, and we will look at any activities and community involvement that you've had in employment.
Thank you. We're going to look at your application. We have our own application at SLU. We also subscribe to the common application. Both of those are treated equally. We're also a test optional school, so your transcript is going to have the most weight to it. However, if you decide that you want to apply with a test score, we will take that into consideration. We don't look at those on a sliding type scale. We're going to look at them independently. We're going to look at your application holistically so that while your application and a transcript are a very large piece of that, we're also going to look at that essay, resume, recommendation letters as part of that complete file.
At Miami, we also use a holistic review, so we look at many factors. We take the common application, just like SLU. Many colleges that you will be considering next year will be on the common application. If you are not familiar with what that is, you definitely will be soon. So we take the common application, $50 application fee. The most important factor that we consider will be the transcript. So we're paying close attention to where you go to high school. Specifically, we're going to look at the school's profile to see what percentage of students are four-year bound, two-year bound, military, and so forth. How many APs, honors, college prep courses are available within the high school, and are the students taking advantage of that curriculum available there? So Miami pays very close attention to strength of curriculum, and that's matched with your grades, your GPA. Because a student can take a lot of really easy courses and get straight A's, but of course we're looking for students who have great grades and then demanding curriculum. We are test optional as well. ACT, SAT, we're test optional through 2026. Last year, about 60% of our accepted students took the ACT or SAT and submitted it. The other 40% decided not to. Like SLU, we'll also pay attention to your essay, your involvement, honors, special circumstances overcome, unique abilities, and that letter of reference. We just require one letter of reference, but we'll take multiple.
I did the same thing. Not to repeat from my peers on the stage today, but ours are very similar as well. We require the Common App, Coalition, or QuestBridge application, one of those three. On top of that, we are actually a no-harm test optional school. So we've actually been test optional, I like to say, before it became cool. But as a no-harm school, I usually encourage students, if you want to submit your score, that's fantastic. If you don't, that's also fantastic. We're going to look holistically at your entire application, at your involvement, at the things that you've done during your time in high school, what you've overcome, etc. So we are a no-harm test optional school. On top of that, we also invite students to participate in an optional interview. Interviews are really great opportunities for students to, one, get to know the Denison community, but also for us to get to know you more as well. And then lastly, we have no supplemental application, we have no application fee, and right when you submit your application to us, that will also be, like most of our peers have said here on stage, we require the Common App. We just need 2 recommendations, one from a teacher, one from a counselor, resume if you want, a list of activities, etc. But we also, there's no additional merit scholarship application, right? When you submit an application to us, you're automatically considered. I like to give the example of there's no need to Google search merit scholarship application for Denison University because it does not exist. You're already considered right when you submit to us from there. So, yeah.
A lot of what you've heard definitely applies to us. At Vanderbilt, we use a holistic admissions process. We are test optional through 2027. When we say test optional, we truly mean it. Don't feel like you need to submit a test score to put yourself in a more advantageous position. We do have a little bit of a different policy than what Denison was sharing in that if you do choose to submit a test score, we do see that score. So if you are choosing to submit a test score, I encourage you to be really thoughtful about if that score enhances your application overall. Some other things that we're looking for, I love to see a student's fit for their intended program of interest. So we have those 4 different undergraduate schools. Students are admitted into one of those 4 different undergraduate schools. So if you are considering a place like Vanderbilt, as you're thinking of those programs, think of the qualities that you hold that will make you a great candidate for it. An example I'll give is, let's say that you're interested in engineering. Some great qualities I see in engineers are tinkerers, creatives. If you're a people's person, you'll usually fit in with the way that we do engineering. So maybe think about those types of skills that you have and the ways that you can showcase it within your application. Those extracurriculars are very helpful. We love to see what you've been involved in, but I really encourage you to think about kind of the values that you hold and the person that you are and the way that you can put that within your application. For those of us that use holistic review, whether it's for admission or whether it's for scholarships, that kind of personal touch will help out a lot within the application process for us.
Some of you touched on this a little bit, but you also are looking at the rigor
I'll start with that. I call this sometimes the $1 million question, and I will admit I may not give you the answer that you're necessarily looking for this evening. At Vanderbilt, we are really looking for students that kind of have a both and in that situation, to be totally honest. We are at a place where we are incredibly selective, so we are looking for the students who have taken those really, really challenging courses and done really exceptionally well within those classes. Now, what I don't want you to hear from that this evening is, oh, if I got a B in an AP course, then everything's downhill from here, right? That is not what we're taking from this whatsoever. Because a part of that holistic review is really diving into your transcript and getting an understanding of your academic history. We understand that you're a high school student. There's a lot of things that have happened to you over the past few years. So if maybe you had, let's say, a dip in your transcript, for example, but your family was going through a hardship, you were going through something personally, there was some type of significant life event, for example, we understand that. Your transcript for schools that use a holistic review is not really just in a silo necessarily. So I definitely encourage students, take those challenging courses, get the best grade that you can, if you will, but also share a little bit of that additional context with us, because I think that's really helpful for many of us.
Yeah, I will just second all of what John Palmer said, that we are going to look at the rigor of the curriculum. We don't have a specific GPA requirement. We just are going to see, did you take the most challenging or challenging classes that your school offers? And that's going to be something that we'll review. And that's kind of going with the fact that we are also highly selective. We have a 17% acceptance rate. So we are looking at the rigor of the curriculum overall.
I agree with all of that, so I don't want to just repeat everything. I think you explained it perfectly. So same with Miami. Just a similar topic with all of that. We know the counselors, they email us, they call us, so they know if they have a question about Miami to call or email me. So it's not unusual. Sometimes I'll get an email from one of the counselors and say, hey, there's this one English teacher at the school that's just tougher than maybe some of the area schools. So we get a little bit more context on that way, just the relationship with the counselors. So I just wanted to add that as well.
Good point. So we are at what we would call a moderately selective school. So it's going to be a little bit different how we're viewing that transcript and those grades when we see them. We do want you to challenge yourself. We do want to see good grades. We're looking for trends in that transcript. I'm also at a Catholic Jesuit institution. I'm looking at the other things that you've done. Have you had time for service? Have you been a leader in something? Is your strength of schedule so hard that you haven't done those other things outside of the classroom? We'd rather see you do the other things outside of the classroom. So a little different scenario.
And at your large publics, if you meet the admission criteria, you're going to get admitted. But where you all need to look at are the honors colleges. So honors colleges are very specific. They will take in about 6 to 10% of a class typically at a large public. So your honors colleges, they're the ones who are looking to see whether the student took the AP courses or they took the standard level courses, or they took the IBs or they just took the lower levels. So that is where I think when you're looking at the larger public schools, that if you're interested in the honors colleges, you need to be thinking ahead about taking more APs.
For us, it doesn't have to be that you've been a leader in 3 or 7 or 12 different organizations. We want to see that you have a passion for something and that you have a purpose that you're driving towards. It's not about volume for us. It's that you've had the time in your schedule, you have a passion for something, and you're addressing that.
I'll say for Denison specifically, we pride ourselves in the fact that we have extremely involved students. We have students who are involved in 2 to 3 different clubs and orgs on campus. You can see their passion for everything that they do. And we want to see that in incoming students as well. So it doesn't depend on the variety of things that you do, or if it's just straight focused, I'm a theater major forever and ever. We just want to see, where's your passion lie, and do you match also with how our students are also engaging in their activities on campus as well.
I'll add to that. In our office, whenever we're training to read applications, we'll talk about that there are kind of these 2 different types of students, if you will, and we'll call them either a well-rounded student or a well-angled student. And there's really a space for both of those students within our admissions process. I think definitely what Abby's kind of getting at here, and I want to double down on, is more so than just the specific types of clubs or activities or involvement that you've done. What does that say about you and how you may fit with that certain institution? Vanderbilt's also a fully residential institution, so when I'm looking at your list of activities, yes, I love to know what leadership you've done and what service you've done, but more so I'm pulling out, kind of like I was talking about earlier, those elements of who you are as a person and how that could fit within our residential community overall. A lot of us will say that we are kind of bound to our faculty members, but also our housing offices at the same time. We want to make sure that you will perform great when you're sitting in a classroom with faculty members, but also that you'll be an exceptional community member when you're living on our campus for 4 years as well. So I'd say there's space for both of those students within many of our processes.
And that's one of the things that we try to tell students when we are working with them, that colleges are trying to figure out if the applicants are going to be a good fit for their campus when they are applying. So you're looking at all these different characteristics. And you had all mentioned that you use some essays to varying degrees. You just read, I dare say, thousands of essays in the last couple of months. Can you share a couple tips and suggestions on what constitutes a really good essay, and perhaps a really good essay, just a general topic that you recall from the last couple of months? What was a really good topic that you remember?
We've actually done sessions. I've done sessions at Villa, whole programs just on the essay. So it's tricky to answer in just a few seconds. I like reading the essays. I read about 1,000 applications a year, so that's about 1,000 essays. Since we don't have a ton of time, I recommend this great resource to folks called the College Essay Guy. It doesn't sound real, but I trusted it is. It's thecollegeessayguy.com. He actually has a section on there that gives advice from folks like us, who have been in the business for a while, and things to do, things not to do, tips, how to even just get your essay started. I think the best suggestion that I can have with that is just understand that we are real people. We are reading the essays, it's not like some robot or something. So it's important to keep our attention, capture our attention right away like a newspaper article. Don't bury the lead. We want to know what the topic is right away, and it should keep our interest through the whole essay. I would recommend shying away from topic of choice. That's just my piece of advice, because I think a lot of times when students do topic of choice, they just kind of start rambling about all their different activities and their involvement and all that. So it's best just to keep your idea concise to one specific idea, and even more specifically, a moment in time. So for example, this past summer, I met with a student reading her essay, and she was talking about a road trip from Milwaukee out to Colorado, and she was talking about the entire trip. I said, well, why don't you just talk about one specific thing during your trip in Colorado? Did you go whitewater rafting? Did you go bird watching? Whatever it was. And then what did you learn from that experience? I'm trying to think of a specific essay I read this year. Let me think. I'll get back to you, because out of 1,000, I'm trying to remember my favorite or most unique one.
I have a favorite one that I read this year that still has stuck with me, and it was, the applicant was volunteering at a hospital, and he wrote a story called The Blue Jacket Chronicles, and he literally wrote about some of the people that he interacted with, the conflict that may have come up during his volunteering services, the things that he learned about himself, and it was like in this beautifully written chronicle essay, and of course it's one of those things like you got to read it and you can't read it, but it was an amazing essay and it has stuck with me. I as a reader, I love anything that relates to symbolism, so seeing how uniquely how the applicants in our poll utilize that and how they also learned something from an experience was really awesome.
I think any essay is good when we learn something new about the student. We've looked at the transcripts, we've looked at the letters of recommendation, the activities that you've done. When the essay is a reiteration of that, we've seen it before. We've just looked at it in the last 10 minutes. When you learn something new that's exciting that you didn't tell from the other documents in the file, that's a good essay to me. It makes us get to know you better. For us, we're not looking for reasons to keep you out of our institution. We're looking for reasons to bring you in and why you could be part of the community. We're frankly looking for something to talk to you about so that you've told us the story. When we call you, we want to reference that essay that you wrote and talk to you about it and be able to bring that up in our conversations. That's really part of why we're looking at it. On the flip side, I would say a bad essay is something that is really polarizing to the person that's reading it. We had 2 examples of that this year where people were casting judgment on different groups of people and where the counselor reading it was personally offended by the essay. And nobody's asking anybody to write that in their essay. So that's where I would steer clear from.
Just a helpful hint with scholarship interviews. So many of your colleges that you're applying to will have scholarship interviews either through Zoom or they'll have scholarship days. Make sure you go back and review the essay that you sent to those colleges, because when you're interviewing, your interviewers are going to ask you questions from that essay. And if you're not familiar with what you wrote, it will come clear in that interview.
I guess I'll put a bow on our essay conversation here. I've noticed in my years in admissions, I feel like the essay sometimes can feel like the most stressful part of the application. And I wonder if it's because it's maybe the most personal part of the application. It's, if you think about it, really the only part of the application where we are able to hear your voice directly. So I think it can be really easy to put a lot of pressure on yourself to live up to, gosh, they're reading hundreds or thousands of applications. How do I live up to that? I think most of us would tell you, when we read applications this year, like 99% of them were really great essays because, to your point, we learned something new about that student. So if you are feeling a little bit of pressure with that essay, I'm not saying blow off your essay, or like definitely make sure that you are really thoughtful with your essay, but also know that, again, we are the people reading those. We understand that you're 16, 17, 18 years old. We don't expect for your essay to read like our favorite novel or a favorite nonfiction book that we're going to pick up after we're reading applications. So maybe lessen that stress for yourself if you're feeling that a little bit, and know that we are just looking to get a glimpse into just who you are as a person. That is really helpful in the application process.
To expand on that just a little bit, have you ever read an essay this year, this cycle, where it was clearly not written by the student and artificial intelligence was used? And do you have a policy on that? Or how do you handle something that is clearly not 17-year-old writing?
I'll start with that. We really, I think going into this year, a lot of us talked about, gosh, our essay's going to read totally different than normal, all of this. I'll say maybe people fooled me, but I didn't feel like I saw a ton of kind of artificial essays, if you will, or doctored essays. I felt like a lot of the essays I saw this year were very genuine and very much read like a 17-year-old wrote it. More so than not, sometimes you will see an essay every once in a blue moon that maybe sounds like, a 45-year-old lawyer from suburban St. Louis wrote it instead of a student. I'd say that more so than just artificial intelligence. But overall, I feel like most of mine read like real high school students for the most part. I don't know about y'all.
No, I agree. I'm on the same page here. Of course, there are some outliers that you can kind of tell. That cute little 17-year-old didn't do it. But I will definitely agree. It's It's pretty standard. But also on the AI situation too, right now, I think it's a big topic in admissions, but also just in our office as well. It's just we are definitely learning and navigating where our policies lie with that. So we are in that conversation currently. So.
We've had 2 this year that I know weren't written by the students. The reps flag them, they send them to me. We look at their English grades, I call the school, and in that case, I've asked for papers written by them in their English classes to be sent to me. And I've also sent them very personal questions about themselves to get more writing from them. In both examples, it was quite obvious. But otherwise, the vast majority of them, they don't come off as written by ChatGPT. I can tell you that the quality of writing has diminished significantly since COVID. I saw it with my own son when he went through it in high school. But I can say a large kudos to your all's high schools. Your all schools know how to teach English. Your essays coming out of your schools are very, very strong.
That's great to hear. All right, does anyone in the audience have some questions that they want to ask?
I do. Okay, I would like to hear about like clubs like you have outside of school, whether it be sport, drama, singing, and stuff like that. What would you do if you have a daughter that's great in science and math, but she's influenced by Taylor Swift, but wants to get up on stage? Tell me about the clubs.
A liberal arts institution is for you. I'll give you a great example. One of our student docents is what we call our student tour guides. She is a remarkable musical theater artist, but she has the brains for days. She is a biology major with a minor in sociology and another minor in theater and creative. Like, she's incredible. I'm honestly so boggled by how these liberal arts students do so many amazing things. So with that being the case, I would recommend to your daughter looking for an institution that will match with maybe a major or something that allows her to be a brainiac, but then also the extracurriculars allow her to still get on stage and to geek out about Taylor Swift. And there's probably a Taylor Swift club out there, I just know it. Just finding those outlets that allows her, and that's the beauty of a liberal arts institution, that you do get to experience the majors that you're interested in, but also finding interdisciplinary ways to engage with, okay, what's the sociology of Taylor Swift songs? There's a class that literally exists somewhere. I know it about that. So do you have one? I'm sure we all do. Oh, yeah. So that is the beauty of a liberal arts institution, and I highly encourage your daughter to continue pushing through and being all about her interest, because she will find her right school.
So we have an activities fair every semester. So it's just the first week of classes, and 600 plus clubs and organizations are all in the main gym. It's a little overwhelming. I was very active, very social in high school. I was involved in maybe 5 or 6 clubs in high school. I don't know how I had time to study or sleep even. And then when I went to college, I went back to my residence hall and I had a stack of brochures, from all these clubs I want to get involved with. But you just don't have as much time in college compared to high school with academics. So I chose maybe 2 or 3. We have a skydiving club. We have like a bowling club. We have, there's just so many clubs that I don't even know about. And if you're interested, you can go to our website and search our student activities page and look up every club and organization. The performing arts are pretty big at Miami. We have a lot of a cappella groups, we have chorale groups, orchestra, marching band, and a lot of our performing arts clubs and opportunities are available to the non-music majors. So if she is artistic, just know that even as a non-art major, she can probably pursue that at any of our colleges.
We do something similar at the beginning of the year. We have a clubs and organization fair. I really like what we do, though. We put it in the center of campus outside with tables. Every student comes up and gets a bowl of ice cream, And then every different club or organization has a different topping. So it encourages students just to go from place to place and kind of learn a little bit while getting a topping if they want, or kind of making their way to the next one. We have over 300 different clubs and organizations on campus, and when I first arrived at SLU, I asked, how did it get that large and why are there that many? And the reason for that is, I said, we want you to find your passion. Any group of students, as long as they can find at least 4 people that would like a club or organization, we will sanction that club and organization for them within reason, and then fund it for the students so that it can become a bigger club or organization. So if we've got 4 students that are interested in something, we're gonna make it a club and organization to see if more are interested.
Other questions? I've got a couple, please. In terms of the holistic process, would you say that you give equal weight to the various components, GPA, essay? And I guess the reason I'm asking that is in regard to the essay conversation. Duke University made news in the past couple weeks saying they're no longer putting a kind of weight component to it as part of their application process. It's more a tell us who you are as a person, but it's not going to factor in terms of application decision having any weight there. And then my second question is curious, I'm hearing an emerging trend for video submissions as an aspect to the application process, and I'm curious if any of your schools have a video component.
We do not have a video component, and I have no desire to have a video component. So.
We have no desire to do it.
Okay, good, good. So when it comes for us for test optional, right now it's 38% of our applicant pool are applying test optional. The largest weight, as Jean said earlier, it goes to the transcript. So that's well over 65, 70% of what we're looking at. It's the courses, it's the type of school that the students are going to that we're looking at. And you all go to excellent high schools, every one of you. We do put a lot on the essay, and because that's where we can find out more about the student. And then outside of that, I would say for us, we put a little bit lower weight on the activities in many cases.
Same for us. There is a new vendor I talked to the other day called Co-Video that is talking about getting away from essays and having colleges and universities sign up to do video type essays. Not something that we were interested at this point in time, but it is growing and emerging, and there's vendors coming up to supply that.
Yeah, by far we put the most emphasis on the transcript. I think most college reps would probably agree, because that's the best indicator of success in college, academically. So yeah, kind of like what my peers said here, the transcript by far. I mean, we'll have students that might be involved in one activity and still be admitted to Miami. You know, it's because the transcript puts the most weight. No talk of video submissions in the app. But on the Common App, sometimes I'll see a link for YouTube or add me on Instagram or add me on TikTok, and we're not going to do that. I'm not going to type in all these scared, yeah.
I should add, though, that some of us might have specific scholarship programs that require video submissions, and we do. Through our Honors College, the Stamped Scholars Program, it requires video submissions. And I'm sure we all have something like that.
We have no video requirement at this point. I was a dance major. Now I'm an admissions counselor. Surprise! So I had to do the whole portfolio thing. I personally, I think the video submission works better for the arts. Hence why I'm on the arts team. But anyways, when we're looking at applications, transcript for sure, activities for sure. We also want to see if you've come to see us. Have you, we call it demonstrated interest. I know we'll probably talk a little bit more about that down the road, but we want to see if you've engaged with us because we want to engage with you. And that's something we're also going to take a look at.
And I'll just speak to the holistic review part of your question. I saw, of course, the news when our friends over at Duke, all of that kind of came out a couple of weeks ago. And I think for a variety of different colleges that use holistic review, there isn't necessarily a kind of let's now score the essay, let's now score the resume, let's do this, let's do that. It's more so various different ways of scoring that kind of zoom out a little bit more rather than scoring the specific parts of the application. So some schools may have a way where they are scoring your overall academic preparation. That probably starts with the transcript, the types of courses that you've taken, test scores, if that's included, that type of thing. Other schools may be looking at kind of who you are as a person, so learning about that from the essay and the extracurricular activities, letters, so on and so forth. So I think the frustrating thing with holistic review, when you hear us talk about it sometimes, is that there's not kind of an easy pie chart of how it all necessarily breaks out. I think you've heard some great recommendations in that the transcript and your academic background is really kind of the cornerstone of your application. That's at least how we think about it. Kind of that's your solid foundation. And then we want to see that you built a really nice house on top of that foundation. And that's all of the other parts of the application. So, yeah.
So an application is the ultimate form of demonstrated interest. Can you talk a little bit more about what demonstrated interest means to your particular institution?
I will go first. I come to Missouri, St. Louis specifically, once every fall. So there's only so many times our timing will work. But if I'm in the area and you're on our emailing list, you will most likely get an email saying, hey, I'm coming to Villa, like come and see me. That is going to be considered a demonstrated interest. Initially, where a demonstrated interest for us lies is we want to see that you have an interest in getting to know us, and then we can get to know you more. It goes back to our interviews are optional. We want to get to know you more. We are a small liberal arts institution. We are all about community. We are all about networking, relationships. So that's really lies into how we go forth in our demonstrated interest lookabouts. On top of that, we have a number of programs that we offer throughout the fall, throughout the spring, etc. We have visits. So there's ways that you can come and visit us, and we'd be so excited to have you on campus to really see if Denison is the right fit for you.
I'll give you the complete opposite answer so you hear kind of both sides of the coin. At Vanderbilt, we do not use demonstrated interest as a part of our admissions process. So you can come to a college fair, high school visit, you can come to Nashville every single day, you can email me, all of that. That is lovely. We love talking to you. However, that does not impact your college application. So that's kind of our process. We will use demonstrated interest just in one case, and that's whenever we are looking off of the wait list. We actively will work off of the wait list, and about 10% of our incoming class actually comes from the wait list every year. So in that case, we will get a lot of letters from students and emails from students who say, hey, by the way, just want to let you know, still very much interested in Vanderbilt. Those are certainly welcome at that point, but for us, that would be the only part where we are looking at a student's demonstrated interest.
I would say that all of us, though, are probably tracking all of our different interactions that we're having with you. While we're not using demonstrated interest, we're not using those interactions to decide if we're admitting a student or not. It is what we're modeling our entire enrollment off of in all of the classes that we're enrolling. We're taking all of those interactions to know what types of scholarships we should go out with that year, what our propensity is to make class, what percentage we should admit, things of that nature, and it's guiding our decisions for the next 3 years after that too. So know that every interaction is important. All of us are looking at that. It's just for a variety of different reasons.
Is it true that you can actually tell how many of the emails that you sent to a student, you know if they've opened it or not?
Yes.
I can tell you if they open it on an iPhone or an Android or a computer.
And text messages
Mm-hmm.
delivered.
So I have another question. Okay, I'm surprised about the testing. ACT, everybody, well, I would imagine most of the students here and a lot of other schools, they take the ACT. And you're saying that most of the admissions requirements are talking about the GPA and the toughness of their schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can, I mean, for us right now, we're still test optional for another year. So because of that, we talk to students that you have the option of taking the test if you want to. Many students will take the test because some of our scholarships, especially our competitive scholarships, require a test score. You won't be eligible for any of those high-end scholarships like a Stamps or a Mizzou Scholars unless you take the test. We do have scholarships for students who don't take the test, but they're typically lesser value in scholarships for us.
We are test optional. However, we will never let a test score harm a student either. So we do encourage students that if they have a test score, send it to us. If we look at that test score and that test score would keep them out of the institution, we will counsel that student to tell them, we're not going to include that in your application when we review it. You should not be someone that is test inclusive in this application. And we're going to work with you and talk about that so that if it does help you, it would change your scholarship, it would get you into an honors program, something of that nature. We want to have it so that we can use that to advocate for you, but we're not going to let it hurt you at any point in time.
So you can tell every college has different answers already. We're all unique. So with Miami, we are test optional through 2026 for all programs. So admissions, scholarships, nursing, business, our most competitive programs that we have. So in terms of admission, we will use a test score if a student wants us to consider the test score. But if a student doesn't submit the test score, then we'll put more emphasis on the transcript. Now, in terms of the scholarships, what Miami will do is we will determine a scholarship amount based on if the student does submit the test score, and then what would the scholarship award be if the student hadn't submitted a test score, and we'll pick whichever is highest in terms of the scholarship. So sort of like Denison, it can't harm the student, but in terms of admission, unlike Denison, a low test score could actually hurt a student at Miami. So in that case, what I would recommend is talk to your school counselor or talk to me, because a lot of colleges will publish their averages on their website. A lot of universities will publish what we call a middle 50%. So the bottom 25% scored in this range, the top 25% above the range, and so forth. Just that way you can kind of get some context. So if students are in that bottom 25 percentile, I would not apply with a test score.
Mitch said it perfectly on my behalf. If you submit it, amazing. If you don't, amazing. We're going to look at everything else in your application. At this time, also, test scores are not going to be considered within financial aid scholarship awarding. That is going to be more on the transcript, but also how we holistically review the decision. The scholarship awarding will kind of go on that route rather than one specific number for us.
One final thing I'll say with testing is kind of the test optional spread really happened during COVID. So a lot of schools adopted test optional kind of at that point during 2020 because there was a lack of access to tests. What a lot of institutions that have decided to keep test optional from that point have then seen is that those students who were admitted through a test optional process, through a holistic review, are still performing really well. I mentioned earlier that we've extended it through 2027 at Vanderbilt. We have done that because we are a research institution at our core, and there are a lot of people that have dug into the data to see these students are doing really well whenever they're coming to Vanderbilt. So I'll just use Vanderbilt as an example. If we were doing the same conversation, let's say 15, 20 years ago, and you had someone from Vanderbilt here, you would probably hear a very different answer from testing. Testing was really important to a lot of these highly selectives at that time. Our processes have changed. The pool has changed. Just the demographic of students have changed as well. So I think to answer the why part of your question, I think a lot of admissions offices, if given the power to be able to explore test optional, have noticed that there's a real benefit in being able to not just look at the test score for students, and that we're still able to see if they're going to perform well academically and still be a good community fit for us as well. So we could talk about the why of the test score for like hours probably. We won't do that to you, but that's a little piece of the why.
On the test optional thing, it's so doesn't make any sense, right? So if you don't declare your score, you are
Sorry, I'm going to jump at this question because I'm really glad that you asked this. I'm really glad that you asked this because I think that's sometimes, very understandably so, a little bit of a misconception, if you will, of the way that we will review applications. Whenever we talk about reviewing an application at Vanderbilt, we always say every time we open an application, we have a highlighter in our hands, not a red pen. So we're thinking about why that student would be a good fit, understanding we will only accept about 6% each year. That doesn't change the way in which we review an application. So if a student applies test optional, I don't make any assumptions about that student's test score. I know there are a variety of reasons why that student may have chosen to apply test optional. It could be lack of an access to tests. It could be because the way that they learn does not associate well with testing. There's so many different reasons why. I know my grandma told me what happens whenever you assume. I won't finish the rest of that, but if you know, right? So we joke about that with our readers a little bit. Do not assume anything that's not in the application. The average college application is like 20 to 25 pages. So there's a lot of information that we can look at to get a good idea of your academic viability aside from that test score. So I'm glad that you brought that up because we think about it a little bit differently, most of us, at least, yeah.
Yes. I've seen you raise your hand so many times that I want to make sure you get your question answered.
What's the legacy policy for all
Well, I can go ahead and answer that real quick and simple. That's awesome if you're an alum. No, I don't see any of that in the application. I don't see any of that information. But, of course, we love seeing that our alumni are engaging with us. Short and sweet.
Yeah, we ask for it on our supplemental questions, just parent, sibling, but it has no bearing on the decisions. It's only for tracking purposes, like how many alums do we have in our incoming class? But yeah, no, we don't have any thumb on the scale for legacy or for scholarships.
Since you folks come here to St. Louis, you're familiar with some, I would assume a lot of the St. Louis schools. Does an application from St. Louis go to a specific area? So, Villa compared to another school, how is that determined, the academic rigor of each school, and how's that taken into consideration?
I'll pick it up. We understand that each high school is totally different for a lot of really good reasons. Also understand St. Louis is definitely unique in the fact that we could, throw a ball out that window and probably hit 5 different private high schools in the span of like 2 miles or so. Each high school is totally different, and whenever we come and visit your high school or whenever we come to your area, really helps us to be able to better read those applications. We truly believe that one high school is not quote unquote better than the other necessarily, but we understand that a student who applies from Villa is going to look different than a girl who applies from Viz or from St. Joe's or a guy from SLU High. I know that because over the past 10 years, I've been to those high schools many, many times. So as far as the way that we're reviewing those applications, we're always thinking about that student's context and thinking about it in a positive way, if you will, and really not kind of butting schools against each other necessarily, but rather understanding that student within their context. We also understand that a city like St. Louis is very different, and even the same 2 students who go to one high school could have very different lives outside of the high school as well. So more a student can share even just about, do they live in the suburbs? Do they live in the city? What does their day-to-day life look like? That's helpful too.
But I guess my question, if an application goes to you, you know that, but if that application doesn't go across your desk, how does someone else know that?
Yeah. So I have a staff of 10 counselors, and we engage in different, obviously in different what we call territories. So Missouri specifically, I have the 3 M's is what I call it. Missouri, Minnesota, Michigan, and then other Midwest states. I am the one who's going to be familiar with that. I am going to be the first reader. I am going to be providing that context for my readers. For us specifically, we have 1 reader, 2 reader, 3 reader, and committee. I'm literally seeing the application a bazillion times, and a lot of eyeballs are going to be on it as well. But I am the one providing that context very first thing, if that helps.
Yeah, and then once an application is received, I'm sure all the schools probably get thousands of applications. So one person, I wouldn't imagine, is reviewing every single application. Is there like, all right, you make it past the first person, or the first person to look at it, can he exclude, say this person just doesn't cut the mustard, they're out, they don't make it to step 2, or how does that?
They make it through all the steps. No one is looking at it and then saying, see you later, just because of how we're reading, how it's read. That is not the case at all. Everyone's going to look at it, and it's going to be, for us specifically, it is a collective decision from there.
So it makes it to, all applications make it to a committee.
Correct.
And that's where the decision.
Correct. Yes. Good question.
Yeah,
There's a
and-
lot of logistics.
Miami, we get about 35,000 applications a year, and we do read every single one.
I think it's fairly common of our industry and offices, though, that typically we read by territory. So typically there is someone that's in charge of a specific state or a specific region or city, or we break out, like for us, St. Louis is read by a couple of different people, but we read St. Louis by high school, so that different students from this high school would not be read by different people. They've got a specific list of 20 schools that they've read for as many years as they've been working for us. But that's kind of a general industry practice for us, is that we don't want different people reading through different high schools. We try to keep it by territory or zone in generalities.
Is more weight or consideration given to the applicants that are very, I think you use the term angle, they know they want to be an engineering student, as opposed to those students and incoming freshmen who aren't quite sure about what major they may want to pursue?
So we don't admit to major. We just admit based off of, are you a good fit for Denison? Have we engaged together? And then maybe the stars align. But for us, I highly encourage, if you feel undecided at a liberal arts institution, I'm just going to preface that, I highly encourage going undecided. I know it feels scary. You're like, what? Go undecided? That is like, for me, that is the most stressful thing ever. But when you go to a school like Denison, that it really allows you to explore all elements of who you are in academia, but also in co-curricular activities, you get to see that interdisciplinary education model, allowing you to really define, okay, this is what I'm passionate about. This is what I want my major to be. I'm going to learn these amazing skills from these classes that I'm going to take with me into my career. And then on top of that, we have amazing resources that allow you to really engage with where you want to go in your career. So for us specifically, long story short, we do not admit to major, but we also do have those programs ahead of time for you to declare if you do want to, right when you step on campus, to go ahead and declare your major, but there's no pressure for that, right, like through admission for us.
So each one of our undergraduate colleges and schools actually has a program that we call Still Deciding within it. So if you know that you like business but you're not sure about accounting, we have a Still Deciding program for you. We also have Still Deciding as a general major. So if you don't know business versus engineering versus whatever that major may be, we've got a program where we strive to have what we call major exploration throughout it, so that students work more closely with career services, with advising, so that we help them find what that fit is in their first year.
Dad in the back. Oh, hold on one sec. Dad in the back.
Can you maybe each explain or tell the kids here what are some of the more common mistakes you see on applications and what they should talk about?
Please look at your spelling. Please. Please. I know it's really easy to just like be real quick. Believe me, spell check and Grammarly are my best friends, and I'm a professional. Check your spelling, because we will see that.
I think we've all probably seen essays or things where another school is mentioned that's not the school that I work for. And I will tell you, that's me. That's usually my reaction. It's a chuckle. I keep moving on, right? It's not like some big red scratch against that student. I'm not saying that I would purposely advise you to then apply to Vanderbilt next year and put Stanford in it because you know it'll make me laugh necessarily. But we see that certainly from time to time. Yeah.
The biggest the biggest mistake we see at Miami? So like Denison, we don't admit to divisions or colleges. We admit students to the university. However, we do have two programs that are more selective than general admission. One being all of our 9 business majors, and then also nursing. So a big mistake I see with students is they accidentally apply economics in the arts and science instead of economics in the business school. So then when they get their admission decision, they're admitted to economics, arts, and science, but then they'll email me and say, ooh, I actually wanted business. And it's complicated. You know, once you get that admission decision from Miami, we have to pick up the application again, and it's based on capacity. You don't always get in. Might have to wait till sophomore year. Something else is with nursing at Miami is the only major of our 120 majors that's first year entry only. So if you come in undeclared or these fancy names, still thinking, exploratory, you know, I love that, still thinking. At Miami, we call exploratory studies. So if students come in undeclared or theater or something else and then want to switch to nursing, we don't allow that. So the biggest mistake is maybe not thinking about nursing, business, or some of these special admit majors. Every college will tell you something differently. Sometimes you just apply to that university and you're automatically admitted to business, or it's pre-nursing, you know. So talk to your college counselor, you know, use them as your resource and use us as your resource as well. Look up all the information online about some of these unique programs that might require special admission on top of general admission.
You guys took the good ones already. The amount of times I see how Marquette University is someone's #1 choice is amazing. So I think that's probably the most common mistake that we say. Just another tip for you, whenever when you set up your application, it might be in a portal. You have an email address and a password, that type of thing. For us, all of that information keeps going back into that portal, your admit letter, your honors notifications, your scholarship. So that's something, take a snapshot of when you're doing it. Take that kind of thing down, because password resets happen a lot too in that. So that's just one thing I'd say as you get that, your spreadsheet together, the schools that you're applying to. When you apply, make sure you put in one of those cells the email that you use to apply with, and then also what that password is for that university.
So I'm going to go off question here and give just a helpful hint. So I was in your seat 2 years ago. My son is a freshman in college right now. He applied to 9 schools. We visited all 9 schools. So one of the things that we did very early for him was he created an email account specifically for his college applications. It was his name, college. And we set that up, and then he used that to register for the ACT. He used it to register for the PSAT. He used it to apply to every college that he applied to. The other thing we did was we set it up so that account would auto-forward everything to me. That way I could just keep track and know all the deadlines, because he's applying to 9 institutions. We all have different deadlines for absolutely everything. Scholarships, housing, everything is different. So that way I got to see everything coming through. As a side note, more importantly, I got to see what all of my competitors were sending my son. So that was very, very helpful also. So that has worked, it worked amazing for us doing it that way. The other thing we did was he set up a folder system. So his top 9 schools that he was interested in, he had 9 different folders. The name of the college on every folder, but on the front of every folder were all of their important deadlines. Their deadline for their scholarships, their deadline for their financial aid, their deadline for their housing, when housing would open. because we all have different housing openings. And housing at some schools is based on how quickly you apply for their housing, and that will determine how quickly you get into their room selection system. That is very, very important. When you're looking at 9 to 10 schools, it's easy to jumble those all up. Another quick helpful hint, as far as visiting all the colleges, if you've been to a Billiken basketball game, that is not visiting SLU. You want to schedule a formal visit to our campuses. We took my son to a Notre Dame football game years ago, but he wanted to go there for a formal visit. We went back for a formal visit, even though we spent a whole weekend there. So I encourage you, put some effort into your planning of your visits, and they can talk more about visits also, but what you want to do is call ahead and let them know what you want to see. So if you want to see the Honors College, you want to see SLU's wonderful nursing program, you want to talk to any of our programs, we will set that up for you, but we need to know in advance what you want to see. So you need to take some time to plan out doing that. All right, off my soapbox, sorry. So the question is Shakespeare's Pizza any good? It's one of the student hangouts. Yes, I absolutely love it, but I went to school there back in the early 90s, and I've had it ever since. Now my son loves it. He is at Mizzou now. And as a side note, just so you all know, my son was not going to Mizzou. He was going to Oklahoma State. So any of you that end up at Oklahoma State, I have graduation streamers. I have black and gold plates. I have everything that I can just give you because he didn't change his mind until April 15th of his senior year.
I'm pretty certain that's true because you're pretty savvy at computers.
Say what?
You're pretty savvy at computers.
I'm savvy at computers?
But you brought up housing. That's a big question for me. Housing. Is it mandatory to stay on campus? It's kind of like a few questions actually. And can you have your own dormitory or do you have to share?
Sure. So this will vary significantly between every college you're looking at. Even public schools are going to vary significantly as privates. So on our campus and a lot of the large publics, many of them will require students to live on campus for their first year. And then after that, they can move off campus. Some campuses, as you're going to hear, will require you to stay on campus all 4 years. Can you have a whole dorm to yourself? No, but you could get a single dorm room to yourself. Single rooms are very difficult to come by, though, so you need to follow the rules very, very precisely and get into the pool very quickly.
Fair. For us, we have a 2-year residency requirement. However, all of you, I'm guessing, are within a commutable distance, so we do allow students that are in a commutable distance to not fill that residency requirement if they're interested in that. However, I would tell you of our freshman classes for the past 15 years, over 95% have lived on campus regardless of what area they were coming from.
Miami requires housing the first 2 years, with the exception of commuters, but you are not commuters, so you'll be living on campus the first 2 years. Fewer than 10% of our residence halls are singles, but the majority of those are reserved for students with medical needs. So the students should not plan on living in singles their first 2 years at Miami, just to throw that out there. In terms of these housing deadlines and everything, we typically have a May 1st deadline where students have to decide where they're going to let us know whether or not they're going to go to Miami. The housing contract is due after that, and the housing office actually picks up all those contracts after May 1st. So at Miami, there's really no risk or nerves of the students. You know, we don't really do anything with housing until after May 1. So, but some schools do. You know, some schools have a housing deadline that's earlier. So that's a good question to ask the reps is, when is your housing due?
We are all 4 years, fully residential college, no commuters. We are really hard at the fact that relationships are going to be central to your Denison experience, and there's a lot of learning that happens inside and outside the classroom, and that's why we have a fully residential college. I will say, feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm going to live in a dorm all 4 years, it's a little scary. We have lots of options. We have a dorm, we have 6-mans, which is like 3 bedrooms in like a central location, in like a community room with bathrooms that are attached. We have quads. We have off-campus apartments, still on campus, that are for our upperclassmen. So everything has been recently renovated. If not recently, it's going to be renovated in a very short couple of years. So we are really enhancing our on-campus living lifestyle. Going to that single dorm situation, that is, again, I would probably recommend first and second year that the single dorm will most likely not be the case. But once you become an upperclassman, that door will be a little more cracked compared to your underclassmen days. And then same with us when it comes to the housing agreement. All of that is going to be included in what we call our enrollment checklist that happens after May 1. So all that information comes out after that.
Easy answer, fully residential. So students live on campus all 4 years, doubles for essentially all students as well. All of our first year students actually live in a residential college system, which means that each house, as we call it, kind of has its own identity. They all compete against each other throughout the year. There's a faculty member that lives in each of those residential colleges as well, so it kind of helps demystify the college faculty member too. There are a few schools that use that residential college system as well, so worth looking into if you're curious about an even kind of deeper dive into kind of the residential experience.
We have time for 2 more questions.
Okay. I have a question about resumes. Somebody mentioned it earlier, and I'm not familiar with the latest Common App. If that is something that can be submitted there, or if that's an individual college thing where you can submit a resume, and then personal preference for these 17-year-olds, is it a red flag if they go over one page? Or do you appreciate, a little bit more detail?
I personally appreciate it. Also for us, within the Common App, they have what's called I'm blanking on the term, I think list of activities, and we'll give you, I think, maybe 9 spots. If your child is an overachiever and has done so many amazing things, the resume is going to be a really great spot to show all the other things that they've also done. For us specifically, there's not going to be a requirement for the resume in the Common App. That will be considered for us a supplemental document for us. So they can send that to me directly, or they can send it to our admissions email, and we'll add it to their file from there.
When someone applies, does that affect the acceptance rate, whether they're early, binding decision or just early decision 1, 2? How does that affect the acceptance rate?
I'll start off with that question. So there are definitely different acceptance rates depending on the decision plan that a student is applying into. As a general rule, early decision acceptance rates, early action acceptance rates are going to be larger than your regular decision acceptance rates. I'll give you some numbers for Vanderbilt, for example. So of our incoming class, about 1,600 students, about half of those students will come from our early decision pools. We offer 2 different rounds, so early decision 1, early decision 2. The other half of the class will come from regular decision. As you can imagine, early decision pool is smaller, for us about 7,000 students, versus regular decision pools about 40,000 students. So acceptance rate for early decision combined is at about just under 15% for this past year, regular decision about 4%. So definitely a difference between those. Now with that being said, if you are looking to apply to any school that has a binding decision process, so an early decision process, only apply early decision, and you will hear this from your college counselors many times as well. If you know that institution is your number 1 school without a shadow of a doubt, that you know it's your best fit from an academic standpoint, from a community standpoint, we also say from a financial standpoint, probably most importantly, that you know that school's a good fit for you. So essentially early decision, kind of like you mentioned a little bit earlier, is kind of the ultimate form of demonstrated interest, if you will, because we know if you're applying early decision, you're all in, you definitely want to be at Vanderbilt, at Denison, insert school name here. So yeah.
It's important to stay organized. I mean, 9 colleges, man. It's important to stay organized, with all the deadlines and terminology. Miami is one of the few public universities out there that has early decision as an option. So early decision is the round for students who can identify the college as their top choice. So if they get into Miami, early decision, it means they're bound to attend Miami. So they'll cancel their applications at other schools. That's our highest acceptance rate. So students are most likely to get in, especially if they're on the bubble. Most of our students will apply early action, which is another term I have to throw out here. So early decision is the binding commitment. So it has to be their top choice. Only about 5 to 10% of our applicant pool applies early decision. Most of our students will do early action, which is non-binding. So they can apply to as many colleges as they want. They can go to a different college if accepted to Miami. And we have 2 early action rounds. And then our final round is regular decision, which is the most competitive because we tend to fill up most of our class by then.
Agreed. The vast majority of our class comes in early action, so not binding admission. It really meets, and I think the reason that a lot of our class does, it meets with the natural timelines that you guys have in your application processes overall, but it also meets our deadlines for our programs that are highly selective, our nursing, PT, OT, AT, aviation programs that close earlier kind of all fit within that early action pipeline for SLU.
Can you share one bit of parting wisdom for the high school students as they course through their year?
I have this concept that I love to share. I've also not been a parent, but my younger brother is a senior right now. So we've gone through the process. You would think as an admissions counselor sister, he used me as a resource. He did not, but it's fine. We've made the decision. We're all good here. But I told him, and I've told this to a numbers of prospective students as well, make your college bucket list. The college bucket list can look like, what am I looking like? When I go to college, I want to experience X. I want to go study abroad in Denmark. I want to have a close relationship with my advisor. I want to maybe explore what it looks like to do something within the theater department, but also be like in the lab doing research on X, Y, and Z. So I recommend making a college bucket list for what you want your college experience to look like for yourself. And then have that in mind when you're going and looking at schools to see which one is actually the best fit for you based off of the resources that they have, the opportunities, etc. But that kind of gives you a frame of reference throughout this entire college search application journey.
My advice is to take a deep breath and relax. There are some highly selective schools out there. There's also schools that want you so much more than you want to go to them. There are thousands of universities out there, and most people can name about 25 off the top of their head, right? But take that list of 1 or 2 that you love, and there is probably a similar institution out there somewhere that wants you desperately too. So there's a right fit there. It might not be what's in your head right now as your number 1 school, but it's there, and you'll find it, and you'll have a great experience, and it's not going to be the biggest decision that you make your whole life, even though it seems so right now.
My piece of advice, so I'm not a parent either, but I did go through the college process, and I will be honest, my parents just always asking me, like, where are you going? What's your decision? What are you thinking? And sometimes I just wasn't in the mood. I just wasn't feeling it, or I just didn't want to talk about college in the car. So my piece of advice is maybe instead of just asking randomly throughout the day or the week, maybe set up a weekly appointment. Have a little family meeting with the student and a parent or both parents. Maybe it could be